Chapter 21. Father Speaks. If Annabel had rushed home crying and told Mother, the Woodlawn children would not have been greatly surprised, but there seemed to be more in Annabel than met the eye. "What a quaint experience," she said. "They'll hardly believe it when I tell them about it in Boston." Her voice was a trifle shaky, but just as polite as ever, and she went right upstairs without speaking to Clara or Mother and changed to another dress. That evening she was more quiet than she had been the night before, and she had almost nothing to say about the superiority of her native city over the rest of the uncivilized world. Caddie noticed with remorse that Annabel walked a little stiffly, and she surmised that the ground had not been very soft at the place where Pete had scraped her off. "I wish I hadn't promised Tom to play that next trick on her," Caddie thought to herself. "Maybe he'll let me off." But Tom said no, it was a good trick, and Annabel had asked for it, and Caddie had promised to do her part, and she had better go through with it. "All right," said Caddie. After all, it was a good trick, and Annabel had asked for it. "Let's see," said Tom the next day. "You wanted to turn somersaults in the haymow, didn't you, Cousin Annabel?" "Well, I suppose that's one of the things one always does on a farm, isn't it?" said Cousin Annabel, a trifle less eagerly than she had welcomed their suggestions of the day before. The beautiful 8 button dress had not appeared today. Annabel had on a loose blouse over a neat full skirt. "Of course, I never turn somersaults in Boston, you understand. It's so very quaint and rustic." "Of course, we understand that," said Caddie. "But out here, where you have lots of hay, it's bully fun," yelled Warren. "Now, Hetty," directed Tom, "you better stay at home with Minnie. A little girl like you might fall down the ladder to the mow and hurt herself." "Me fall down the haymow ladder?" demanded Hetty in amazement. "Why, Tom Woodlawn, you're just plumb crazy." "Well, run into the house then and fetch us some cookies," said Tom, anxious to be rid of Hetty's astonished eyes and tattling tongue. Hetty departed reluctantly, with a deep conviction that she was missing out on something stupendous. When she returned a few moments later with her hands full of cookies, she could hear them all laughing and turning somersaults in the loft above. She made haste to climb the ladder and peer into the loft. It was darkish there, with dust motes dancing in the rays of light that entered through the chinking. But Hetty could see quite plainly, and what she saw was Caddie slipping an egg down the back of Annabel's blouse, just as Annabel was starting to turn a somersault. "I can turn them every bit as well as you can already," said Annabel triumphantly, and then she turned over, and then she sat up with a surprised and stricken look upon her face, and then she began to cry. "Oh, it's Squishy," she sobbed. "You're horrid and mean. I didn't mind falling off the horse or salting the sheep, but oh, this is Squishy." Hetty climbed down from the haymow and ran to the house as fast as she could go. "Mother, if you want to see something, you just come here with me as fast as you can," she cried. On the way to the barn, she gave Mrs. Woodlawn a brief but graphic account of the riding lesson and the sheep salting. When they reached the haymow, Annabel was still sobbing. "Oh, Auntie Harriet," she cried, "I don't know what it is, but it's squishy. I can't, oh dear, I can't bear squishy things." "You poor child," said Mrs. Woodlawn, examining the back of Annabel's blouse, and then, in an ominous voice, she announced, "It's egg." With a good deal of tenderness, Mother got Annabel to the house and put her into Clara's capable hands. Then she turned with fury on the three culprits, but it was Caddie whom she singled out for punishment. "Caroline Woodlawn, stand forth," she cried. Caddie obeyed. "It was only a joke, Mother," she said in a quivering voice. Mrs. Woodlawn took a little riding whip which hung behind the kitchen door and struck Caddie 3 times across the legs. "Now go to your bed and stay until morning. You shall have no supper." "Ma, it was as much my fault as hers," cried Tom, his ruddy face gone white. "No, Tom," said Mrs. Woodlawn, "I cannot blame you so much, but that a daughter of mine should so far forget herself in her hospitality to a guest that she should be such a hoyden as to neglect her proper duties as a lady. Shame to her, shame! No punishment that I can invent would be sufficient for her." As Caddie went upstairs, she saw Father standing in the kitchen door, and she knew that he had witnessed her disgrace. But she knew, too, that he would do nothing to soften the sentence which Mother had spoken, for it was an unwritten family law that one parent never interfered with the justice dealt out by the other. For hours Caddie tossed about on her bed. The upper room was hot and close, but an even hotter inner fire burned in Caddie. She had some of her mother's quick temper, and she was stung by injustice. She would have accepted punishment without question if it had been dealt out equally to the boys. But the boys had gone free. All the remorse and the resolves to do better which had welled up in her as soon as she had seen Annabel's tears were dried up now at the injustice of her punishment. Hot and dry-eyed, she tossed about on the little bed where she had spent so many quiet hours. At last she got up and tied a few things which she most valued into a towel. She put them under the foot of her mattress and lay down again. Later she would slip down to the kitchen and get a loaf of bread and Father's old water bottle, which she would fill at the spring. At least they could not begrudge her that much. They would soon cease to miss her. Perhaps they would adopt Annabel in her place. Her anger cooled a little in the fever of making plans. It would have been much easier if she had known just where the Indians were. But at this season the woods were full of berries, and there would soon be nuts. John's dog would protect her, and she could live a long time in the woods until she could join the Indians. She knew that they would take her in, and then she would never have to grow into that hateful thing which Mother was always talking about, a lady. A lady with fine airs and mincing walk, who was afraid to go out into the sun without a hat or a sunshade. A lady who made samplers and wore stays and was falsely polite no matter how she felt. A soft blue twilight fell, and still Caddie tossed, hot, resentful, and determined. There was the clatter of supper dishes down below, and no one relented enough to send her a bite of bread. A velvet darkness followed the twilight, and through the window summer stars began to twinkle. Presently Hetty and Minnie came up to bed. Hetty came and stood by Caddie's bed and looked at her. Caddie could feel the long, wistful look, but she did not stir or open her eyes. Hetty was a tattletale. It was torture to have to lie so still, but at last the little sisters were breathing the regular breath of sleep, and Caddie could toss and turn again as much as she pleased. She must keep awake now until the house was all still and the lights out, and then she would be free to run away. Her heart beat fast, and with every beat something hot and painful seemed to throb in her head. A cooler breeze began to come in at the window. How long it took the house to grow quiet tonight! How tiresome they were! They wouldn't even go to bed and let her run away. Then the door creaked a little on its hinges. There was a glimmer of candlelight, and Father came in. He went first and looked at Minnie and Hetty. He put a lock of hair back from Minnie's forehead and pulled the sheet up over Hetty's shoulder. Then he came and stood by Caddie's bed. She lay very still, with tightly closed eyes, so that Father should think her asleep. It had fooled Hetty, but Father knew more than most people did. He put the candle down and sat on the side of the bed and took one of Caddie's hot hands in his cool ones. Then he began to speak in his nice, quiet voice, without asking her to wake up or open her eyes or look at him. "Perhaps Mother was a little hasty today, Caddie," he said. "She really loves you very much, and you see, she expects more of you than she would of someone she didn't care about. It's a strange thing, but somehow we expect more of girls than of boys. It is the sisters and wives and mothers, you know, Caddie, who keep the world sweet and beautiful. What a rough world it would be if there were only men and boys in it doing things in their rough way. A woman's task is to teach them gentleness and courtesy and love and kindness. It's a big task, too, Caddie, harder than cutting trees or building mills or damming rivers. It takes nerve and courage and patience, but good women have those things. They have them just as much as the men who build bridges and carve roads through the wilderness. A woman's work is something fine and noble to grow up to, and it is just as important as a man's. But no man could ever do it so well. I don't want you to be the silly, affected person with fine clothes and manners whom folks sometimes call a lady. No, that is not what I want for you, my little girl. I want you to be a woman with a wise and understanding heart, healthy in body and honest in mind. Do you think you would like to be growing up into that woman now? How about it, Caddie? Have we run with the colts long enough?" There was a little silence, and the hot tears, which had not wanted to come all day, were suddenly running down Caddie's cheeks unheeded into the pillow. "You know, Caddie," added Father gently and half apologetically, "you know I'm sort of responsible for you, honey. I was the one who urged Mother to let you run wild, because I thought it was the finest way to make a splendid woman of you. And I still believe that, Caddie." Suddenly, Caddie flung herself into Mr. Woodlawn's arms. "Father, Father!" It was all she could say, and really there was nothing more that needed saying. Mr. Woodlawn held her a long time, his rough beard pressed against her cheek. Then with his big hands, which were so delicate with clockwork, he helped her to undress and straighten the tumbled bed. Then he kissed her again and took his candle and went away. And now the room was cool and pleasant again. And even Caddie's tears were not unpleasant, but part of the cool relief she felt. In a few moments she was fast asleep. But something strange had happened to Caddie in the night. When she awoke, she knew that she need not be afraid of growing up. It was not just sewing and weaving and wearing stays. It was something more thrilling than that. It was a responsibility, but as Father spoke of it, it was a beautiful and precious one, and Caddie was ready to go and meet it. She looked at the yellow sunshine on the floor, and she knew that she had slept much longer than she usually did. Both Hetty's and Minnie's beds were empty, but as soon as Caddie began to stir around, Hetty came in as if she had been waiting outside the door. "Oh, say, Caddie," she said, "I'm awful sorry I went and told on you yesterday. Honest I am. I never thought you'd get it so hard, and I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be a tattler ever any more. I'm not. But say, Caddie, I wanted to be the first to tell you Father took Tom and Warren out to the barn yesterday afternoon, and he gave 'em both a thrashing. He said it wasn't fair that you should have all the punishment when the same law had always governed you all, and Tom said so too, although he yelled good and plenty when he was being thrashed." "It's all right, Hetty," said Caddie. "I guess we won't be playing any more silly jokes on people." "What's this?" asked Hetty, pulling at the corner of a queer bundle that stuck out under the corner of Caddie's mattress. Out came a knotted towel with an odd assortment of Caddie's treasures rattling around inside. "Oh, that," said Caddie, untying the knots and putting the things away. "Those are just some things I was looking at yesterday when I had to stay up here alone." Until next time.